Welcome everyone to the GameTouch Controller Features update video for version 5.01. Guys, I suppose the first thing to note is that the new version of the clients and server are not compatible with the older versions just because of significant changes in the message set that happens between the two. So if you're on the Amazon client, don't update the server because your old Amazon client won't work with the new server. If you do accidentally do that, there is the legacy builds on the server page where you can download the old version of the server and roll back. But in general, update all of both your clients and the server at the same time, and for Amazon you'll have to wait until that's released on the Amazon storefront. So the first thing you're going to notice with the new build is the first time you load up the client, you'll be greeted with the patch notes screen that was always available down from the bottom right hand corner by clicking on the version information, but a lot of people didn't see that and are missing some important things. And also the patch notes can now be scrolled. As you can see, there's quite a lot of changes for this build. The next thing you'll notice is next to the power button here now, you'll have a little drop down menu, and that allows you to select which screen that you want the GameTouch Controller client to automatically transition to when you connect. So if I set it to nil, or none, and connect, it won't transition anywhere and it will just stay on the main screen. If I set it to, let's say, the FPS panel for Star Citizen, once it connects, it'll automatically transition to that. The next thing you're going to want to do after connecting for the first time in version 5.01 is recalibrate the joysticks. There's been 2 additional axes added, and we'll cover that off in a minute. And to calibrate the joysticks, it's on that game select screen just down the bottom left here, as you did in the past for those using VJoy, and then just hit the auto run calibration. If you're like me and you're using a more advanced setup for VJoy and multiple devices, it will prompt you for selecting your device properties before hitting continue, and then it will run through the calibration process automatically for you. So we go properties on that one, which is the one I use as number 4. Continue calibration. It will then run through the rest of the process as per before. Now I've got it set to display the raw data. Doesn't really add any extra stuff, just more information for the user as it goes through the process. And once it's finished the calibration, you'll be prompted with the calibration complete, then you can close and you're good to go. With the VJoy calibration, if you're using joysticks such as Virpils, the way it selects VJoy automatically typically is just by pushing the V button, and it selects it alphabetically. If your Virpil appears in the list before the VJoy device, it might select your Virpil joystick instead. So what you can do is just on the server, if this is set to 1, just change it to 2. And then when you run the auto calibration, you'll get prompted to select your device. Then just go back into the server, change it back to 1, and then pick your VJoy device in here instead of your Virpil device. And then once you're on this screen, go back and hit continue. And it will run through the process on the correct VJoy device. Now with the calibration of the new joystick axes out of the way, let's cover off on the stuff that's, I suppose, feature-wise new in the build. Again, I've got my auto transition set to mining, so I'll be able to connect to the server and then automatically transition to the Star Citizen mining panel. And you can set that to be whatever you want. So the first thing I noticed with the mining panel, it's had a complete overhaul. Looks completely different now. It now has 2 axes that are larger than before. And they are now digitally separated from the axes on the flight panel. So in the past, this slider on the left here was the same as the SCM slider for flight, and that was interfering with people in things like the Prospector, where you have access to the flight controls and the mining controls simultaneously. So now they've been separated, and that's the reason we needed to recalibrate the VJoy axes, because there's 2 completely new axes. The next thing, the auto ping has been added to the mining panel, and also a cover for what is now the default Jettison cargo button. It's still completely configurable to be whatever button you want, but this one down the bottom now, you push it, you can't push the button straight away, it has that cover. And then once the cover's open, then you can push the button and the cover will close. The next thing, the auto ping itself. There was a community feature request that can we stop the auto ping when we go to FPS or something like that, because people were forgetting to turn it off. And so now you see I turn it on here. If I go to the flight panel, you'll notice that it's still running. But if you go to any panel that doesn't have an auto ping on it, it will stop. So going to the FPS panel, for example, and then going back, you'll notice that the auto ping has now stopped. The next thing that was added, if we go to configure buttons, pick any button, we'll use the doors for example. We've now got the ability to select the different left and right modifiers for Control, Alt and Shift. So if we use the example of the open and close doors, you can see I've still got it set to left Alt, left Control and C. And so if I do that and then do that button, you'll see it's left Alt, left Control and C. But now if I change that, let's say we want right Alt and left Control and C. You'll see that's now right Alt, left Control and C, and that can be true for any combination of the buttons. There we go, right Alt, right Control, left Shift, left Control, C. So you've got a whole myriad of new combinations that you can add for modifiers. The next thing on the buttons is the color. Actually, the next thing is the hold and double tap modifiers are now mutually exclusive. So they never work together, but you could select them, which could have caused issues, but they're now mutually exclusive. And then lastly, the color button. So you now have the ability to individually colorize any of the buttons, and that'll save with your profiles as well. So you can set this one for like purple and yellow, set that, save it, and now we have the open and close doors button as purple and yellow. If you change the palette back on the main screen, set that for red and green, you'll notice that it changes it back. So when you change the palette, it changes everything. So do your palette first and then go through and do your individual button colors. And if, for example, you have your different colored button here, and you want to just change it back to being the same as the palette, when you go to color, there's a little button down the middle here, reset to palette, pushing that. And you'll be able to set that individual button back to the palette. So if you make a mistake, you don't have to reset every single button back to the palette to get it back to that color. Next thing, in the comms panel, I've added some defaults in the comms panel itself. So the display info 0 and 1 for showing your FPS, they're just now set as default options, so you can turn them on and off. Again, you can customize those to whatever you want. It's just people use them a lot, so I put them there. And the buttons that are here for I use them for emotes, and same on the FPS panel for emotes. I realized in the last version I saved them to the Star Citizen defaults for emotes, and the Star Citizen default emotes don't actually work. So I've changed those now with a label for emotes that I use often. So salute, point, wave, and dance. And then if you go into the Star Citizen controls, go to social and emotes. You can bind those simply by binding them in the keyboard and mouse. Social emotes. For example, if I want to label dance, I can just double click on the dance and push the button that's set to dance. and that will bind that, and it'll be the same on all panels. And then you just do that for the other emotes. I mean, you can make them whatever you want. Just point to note, it's in the patch notes. Unfortunately, the previous versions of Star Citizen profiles it may have saved won't be compatible with the new version. When you install the new client, it will overwrite the default and standard profiles that you had previously, so that it has, I suppose, valid profiles to load. It shouldn't crash if you try and load a different profile, but the buttons just won't align to what they are. The general profiles should still function fine. It's just the Star Citizen ones that you have to remake, just due to the significant number of changes with having individual button colors and left and right modifiers for each of the buttons. So apologize for that, and I'll try and limit that wherever possible. But this time there's just too many changes to memory addresses and how the buttons actually send information that they're not compatible. And just remember too, guys, that nearly every feature that I've added in the last few builds has been based on community feedback and requests. So if you have something that you think will be useful for people and it's within my power, jump into the Discord, go into the feature request section, throw in your 2 cents, and then your 2 cents might end up getting delivered to everybody else. Thanks very much for watching the video. Have fun.